Have you ever heard of Blackbucks? Do you know what a lek is? In this episode, we're joined by Dr. Vivek Sridhar and Dr. Hemal Naik as they tell us the tales of the visually spectacular and extremely rare mating phenomenon that's called lekking. Hello, and welcome back to In the Swarm, where we dive into the minds behind the hive. And this week, we have a very, very special pair of guests with us today, Dr. Vivek Sridhar and Dr. Hemal Naik. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Vivek, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Thank you, Naik. Thank you for having us. I'm Vivek. I'm a biologist, a behavioral biologist is what I call myself now. In a past life, I've been an engineer, and then for some time I was making shampoos. And then I got into animal behavior and I got excited. And this is what I do now.
Hemal, please.
Hi, thanks for inviting us. I'm Hemal Naik, and I am an interdisciplinary researcher. I mostly combine computer science with different applications. So I use computer vision for different applications. I've also, like Vivek said, come to wildlife through many different channels. I've worked in hospitals as a biomedical engineer. That's my start. Then I worked in healthcare industry. Then I worked in automotive manufacturing for a while. And then I started bird watching, and that's how I came to studying wildlife. So now I write softwares to study animals.
Yeah, that's super cool. So as you can tell, we have wildly very, very different backgrounds, but I think that only adds to the research, right? Would you maybe be able to tell us a bit more specifically about how you got into collective behavior?
For myself, I think this was a bit before my PhD. So during my master's was my first time kind of in the world of ecology, behavior. My master's was in evolutionary biology, so that's kind of my way in. But I was always interested in social behavior somehow. My PhD advisor, Ian Cousin, like when I looked at his work, I was just fascinated. I think a big motivator for me was trying to understand complex systems, like looking at emergence. And I love animals, like I like the outdoors. I think the complex systems and emergent phenomena drew me from an intellectual point of view, and thinking about doing that with animals that I love. I think this seemed like a great opportunity to combine these things.
Yeah, a perfect combination, right? Get to think about all the nerdy stuff and you can actually go outside. Okay, Hemal.
So it was more like I was doing my PhD already in Munich, where I was doing computer vision solutions for industrial manufacturing. And at that time, my interest in animals and especially birds was increasing a lot. At some point that I decided that I probably would quit my PhD, but then my wise supervisor number one, Professor Nasir Nawab, he advised me to find somebody who would be willing to fund me to do computer vision with birds maybe. And that's when I happened to meet Ian Cousin. So that's how I moved my PhD then here, which then turned into developing technologies here. So I've learned a lot from my colleagues here in terms of behavior, and this is what I think is like now becoming slowly very interesting for me. But I come not from the formal background side. Mm-hmm. I come from mostly spending a lot of hours in the wild looking at animals, making me think that maybe I should do something that allows me to do this more.
I think that's really the perfect way of actually figuring out what you really want to do, right? Because your job or your education is kind of like, it takes so much of your time. And if you're sitting outside and you're like, damn, I love this so much, why don't you try to make that into something that pays a little bit? Okay, and I actually am really happy to have you guys here because I would like at least one of you to explain to me what lekking is.
Lekking, it's a rare mating system. Mm-hmm. So I think it's primarily described in birds. So it's a Swedish word for play. So it was first described in birds in Sweden by a Swedish ornithologist, looking at lots of males aggregating in closely clustered territories. And then they would display here, and females would visit this area to find mates. And so they called it lek. And then I think since then, we've seen leks in birds, in reptiles, mammals, insects, fish, arthropods. It's across the animal kingdom. It's everywhere. How do you get something that evolves across the animal kingdom, but it's still very rare in any way? I think that's one of the things that's very exciting about it.
I'll say a little bit tidbit about the explanation about Lek that we give in India when we are working in the field. Because both of us, our project is based in India. We are fortunate enough to work in the regions where a lot of us speak the language.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of local people, we meet them and then they ask us about what we are doing. And then we take a different approach in explaining them about lekking. So that approach is something like, so in Indian mythology, there is a concept of something called as a Swayamvar,
Mm-hmm.
which is an event that a king would organize for his daughter, and all the suitors would line up, and then they would
compete
and prove their prowess, sort of, and then the female would go and select the male that she would want to marry with.
Yeah, she gives him like a flower garland, right?
So this is a very known concept. So once you just tell people that, look, this is what the animals are doing, with just one word, we are able to explain the entire concept.
They're like, done.
Like, okay, yeah. Do you know that concept? Yeah. So same concept, but female of Blackbucks. And they're like, okay. So it's sometimes it's, in English, it takes a lot of time. See?
Yeah. See, but actually it's this. The Indian people are like, yes, we get it. But in this case, I guess all the females that visit the Lek, each of them are a princess of their own, I guess. So I already asked you to give us a brief explanation of what a Lek is, but I think we should actually introduce to the listeners the animal model that you guys are looking at. So you already spoiled it, Hemal, Blackbucks in India. Which part of India specifically?
So we are working in 2 regions at the moment. So this was our 3rd year of our project. So first year we worked at Velavadar National Park in Gujarat. Actually, official name is Blackbuck National Park. And last 2 years we have worked at Tal Chhapar Sanctuary, located in Rajasthan, which is the neighboring state of Gujarat.
So that's kind of where you have the most likelihood of getting these leks from these blackbucks.
Only places.
The only places?
2 places. We have blackbucks all across the country, but there are only 2 populations that lek, one in Tal Chhapar, Rajasthan, and the other in the Blackbuck National Park.
Okay, so this is the part where, you mentioned that leks are super rare. And how do you figure out when this is going to happen?
It's a breeding behavior. So typically they have 2 primary breeding seasons, one in spring and one in autumn. Around February, March, you expect one of the seasons. So, I mean, the whole lekking period itself is maybe only about 3 weeks. But of course, we don't know the exact time when they're going to mate. So our season ends up being about 2 months because we have to go there, sit there and wait for the season to pick up.
Can you actually briefly explain what the guys do, the blackbuck males, what they do to actually put on the show?
Yeah, so effectively, you have similar displays, whether they are kind of males in neighboring territories, kind of displaying to each other or displaying to a female. Typically, the male puts the chin up, head up, so the horns go kind of parallel to the back, puts the tail up and kind of makes himself big and kind of walks. Then, I mean, within males, of course, you also have aggressions. They lock horns. But the display is primarily this, where you put the head up and tail up.
And during this time, is it like a stage where, all the males kind of parade around doing all of these complex behavior and the ladies are just like looking in on from the distance and like, is that okay? Is that correct? Do we like him?
The thing about Lek is that the animals, the males that gather there, they establish their territory. So in Blackbuck, the way they establish their territory is by peeing and pooping on a place. So then it's basically so Vivek can correct me if I'm wrong wherever, because I'm not a biologist. No, the interesting part is that's idea is that they leave their pheromones for the females to smell, and somehow one of the ideas would be that this might be a way in which females select different males, or there are other mechanisms we don't know about, but they make territories this way that they poop ideally on the same place, and then it makes kind of a big circle around it, so it's like a puddle of poop, which could be of a diameter of 2 meters, maybe, 1.5 to 2 meters could be.
A big circle of poop,
yeah,
okay.
And then it's like within that circle, then there is like a small hole dug up in the center, roughly in the center, but sometimes not. And that's the hole where it kind of digs it up with the antler or horns and sits sometimes, So they are on the leg, it's like a sometimes active, sometimes not so active kind of environment. So some males are sitting, some males are fighting. A lot of things are happening. So this is the territories where ideally males would want females to come and sit.
Oh, so she gets to sit in the...
Yeah, so that's what females do. So it's like males come and they gather like early morning, It's the same place every year. Oh, that's also a special feature about the lek. Geographically, it is traditionally same place every year. So when the season comes, they come there. So males slowly start gathering, sometimes like 5, 10, 15, and then, starts picking up. And at some point when there is like we don't know what's exactly the right moment, but it's like a lot of males and gather, and then females start visiting. And this is when the males get both aggressive to each other to maintain their territories, but also this is when females sort of swing by sometimes, walk around, and then males try to coerce them into their territories. So they circle, and if females probably prefer them, then they go. So this is what we observe, that they go and then sit in different territories of different males. And then slowly the courtship and mounting and those behaviors happen. But it's like a cycle of different events so it's all like, there is a ritualistic feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if males fight, there is a ritual in it. Like they'll have a parallel walk, so they size up each other,
Mm-hmm.
and then they walk with like heads bobbing. So it's basically parallel walk because they walk side to side,
Mm-hmm.
and then they bob their heads left and right, left and right. And
Mm-hmm.
at some point, they either decide to fight or one of them walks away. But it's
so
kind
there's
of
really a bit of a dance. So I have in my head right now, there's like this very specific area that the Blackbucks basically gather every year or so. No, twice a year, right? And then there's like a bit of a build-up, there's a crescendo. And in this area, there's basically a bunch of 2-meter diameter poop rings in which a female may or may not decide that she would sit in, and mating may or may not happen.
Yes, I think sitting is it's optional. I mean, I think basically the female visits this territory, and then there's, of course, some courting. But if you want to be left alone, but you still want to spend time in this territory, you sit down.
Oh.
You're not so interested to mate right now.
Okay.
So the male will still hang around in the area, but is not going to aggressively court you when you're seated.
I thought there's a special place in the middle. No.
I mean, it's this ring, it's this circle. They can spend time.
Okay, but how about the dug up area?
But then just to explain, like this whole area, which we call a lekking arena, is like 200 meters by 300 meters. So each of these territories is still a couple of meters apart. Sometimes, let's say 5 meters, sometimes 10, but it could be in different densities. So you can imagine like a big plain area with a lot of dots on it. And this is where the interaction happens. So as Vivek explained with the female, it's more like if you are outside, not in any territory, that's an indication for males for something. So either they will come and court you, or they will try to get you away, or other females. So it's more like it's a choice that you have to make to sit for peace.
Consent.
If you want peace, settle down.
Settle down. Well, that's very, very interesting. Let me kind of pull you guys back a little bit. So now I think us and the listeners, well, me and the listeners have a very good idea of like, okay, this phenomenon is called lekking, and it's pretty rare, but you can observe it across different species. And you guys go and visit these 2 national parks in India, I think once a year for 3 years now. And what are you guys really studying? What are you looking for?
Maybe this is the point to clarify. We are 3 people in the team. Akanksha cannot be here with us today. So it's the 3 of us. So we all, of course, have different interests. We work together collaboratively, but we come from different angles. My background is studying spatial decision making in animals. During my PhD, I did a bunch of experiments in the lab and developed theoretical models to try and understand how animals choose when they're presented with distributed options. So for me, this is like an ecologically and evolutionarily highly relevant context where it's spatial decision making, because males have these established territories. They're very site fidel. They don't go running around too far. So you know exactly where these options are. Females visit the lek and they're trying to find mates. So for me, this is the same spatial decision making happening at a much grander scale, and actually studying this in the wild. So that's where I come into this from. Perhaps I think Hemal would have a different
angle.
So I've thrown around this word before, so I would just for listeners, I would like to elaborate what computer vision is. Computer vision is basically a technology. So if you have a camera connected to a computer, how can you understand what the camera looks at? Just like a human would.
Yeah, recognition, categorization.
Anything. So a human is able to see something and then understand what is the object, how far is the object, are there 2 objects, are there many, none, differentiate between them, categorize them, guess their motion, and many other things. So similarly, if we want to have these kind of ability with a computer and a camera attached to it, how would we solve these problems? So this is how sort of I come into the field, because this is what somehow is my area of expertise. Let's say a lot of people still record videos, but most people just watch videos manually and then write what the animals are doing.
Exactly.
Which is limiting in a way.
It's a lot of hours, a lot of manpower that you need for that.
So, for example, if you would consider lekking, our project, you have about, on a peak of the lek, about 200, 250 individuals, mix of males and females, interacting with each other. And if you want to study such a behavior, how many people would you need, or how many video cameras, because it's the area of 200 meters by 300 meters? Like, how much manpower do you need to actually know what each individual is doing?
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough problem. For me, it was a natural choice. So before joining this project, I was designing a system to track birds in 3-dimensional. And then we built a facility here for 3D tracking of animals, which is now, for example, being used by many other researchers at the cluster to do 3D tracking for other animals. So I think my interest has always been growing in terms of how to find solutions to measure behavior better and how to then find new things from it.
Yeah.
So, for example, initially I joined in as a person who has tech expertise in terms of carrying out how the project would be, or let's say take a primary role in how to collect data in a way that we can analyze all these animal movements together. And then we made up a plan to using drones. And this is what somehow got the ball rolling, that okay, you can study Blackbucks with drones. And then we came to this idea that, oh, it's interesting to study leks with the drones, because then we have this aerial perspective, so we can observe a lot of animals. So that was interesting part for me, that okay, if we can use, for example, in this case, that we have added complexity of using 3 drones simultaneously. So because the area is so big that we have to take a call on how to best possibly use the technology to meet the requirements and the drone laws. And so running these projects have a lot of other things as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But due to technical limitations, we ended up with a number of 3. So we fly 3 drones simultaneously and record the data. And now, after observing the animals for 3 years, I have my own questions and ideas about what these animals are doing when they're at a lek. So I would say slowly
You're morphing into a biologist.
But it's like you cannot not ask,
Yeah, exactly.
For example, as we explained, it's so rare of the rare things, and then you're like, you observe something.
Yeah.
Like, so I keep on coming with some wild theories with Vivek, like, Vivek, do you think this could happen? And then he's like, yeah, well, you need to observe it more. So
science could only benefit. I'm sorry. Wild theories are great.
There's external collaborators who's based in India. She's like also the expert on Blackbucks. And she's written an article, more actually publicly accessible. It's called Poo to Woo.
Okay, so I thought I was wild. Someone's already done it.
And I think it's brilliant, because I think
Amazing.
She describes all these dynamics where effectively within the lek, because there's so many males that spend so much time there, all the grass here is depleted very, very quickly. And then now you basically need to poop to mark your territory. And fresh poop is attractive because that's where the scent is. Once the poop is dried, there's not so much scent, right? So it's less attractive. But then to poop, you need to eat. To eat, you need to leave your territory, now go out to find grass to eat so you can poop. But you don't want to leave your territory for too long either.
Yeah, because
so
the females are
There's a lot of
coming.
dilemmas here.
Wow.
So I think this is a very nice article to kind of describing this.
Now I have to read it. How about we introduce your project properly now? Project Mela, tell us about that.
I mean, it started, 3 years ago, kind of. It was conceptualized here in Constance. I think Akanksha, she was doing her PhD in the Indian Institute of Science, and she was visiting us in Constance. And then I think we started talking, and then she was working with Blackbucks and drones. And we started thinking about looking at leks and make choice in this system. We were like, oh, this also requires a lot of, technological expertise.
So I just turned back. Yeah, because they were like, we need a computer science person. And I was like, but because I used to sit just back to back with Vivek. I mean, we were in the same office during our PhD, although working on different stuff. So I didn't have to go very far to look for the next project.
So this was like basically a party?
But it's also Mela in Hindi is like a fair, like where people come together. You have, I don't know, some people gathering. Yeah. So since Akanksha was working with Blackbucks before, she told us, oh, the locals, they're called the Lek Amela.
Oh.
And then so we had to find a way that the acronym worked.
But I think it worked out well in a sense. So the essence of Mela is that, when in villages or stuff, wherever you have a proper Mela in true definition is basically people going there and having different types of fun because there are different activities and stuff like that. Now looking back, actually, the name kind of fits because in this project, we've been able to do a lot of things, which is, science is the core part of it, but it's for example, relationships with people that we've built in the villages while working because, we don't work at traditional field sites where there are like field stations and stuff. Every year, whenever we go, we have to arrange first our accommodation and food and then start working. We have usually a team of 9 to 10 people. So it's like we draw a blank every year that we go there and start like, okay, where can we stay? So that's one part of it. But then if we add more to it, that how these years have been in terms of not only relationship with the field assistants that we've had. So for example, for the project, we decided that we'll support Indian students who are coming up, so who are doing their bachelor's and master's in India for two reasons. One is that there is no shortage of talent in India, actually.
No, yeah.
And the other part was that it would be very easy in this scenario, as I explained, that we have to arrange our food and everything. There are a lot of logistics requirements that you have to do in a project, which requires at least some sort of familiarity with the ways of lives and languages and so on. Luckily, Hindi is well-spoken language in many parts of India, and the parts where we work, we've usually been able to work with that language, and then it's also very easy to communicate with the team, or they don't have to rely on us being the native speakers to function.
Exactly.
Then we've had 3 artists joining us in this as part of the exchange. A Norwegian filmmaker was making a film on how scientists study animals. We had a DJ from India joining us last year. So we have this aspect which is like, so we, as part of this exchange, we do art events every year. So far, we've done like 5 exhibitions in last 2 years. And so in Constance, we've done from 2 consecutive years. We host a party at Kula, which is like art science party.
Yeah.
So it's now we can say that we've assembled many different things together in the project, where now we feel that the name kind of worked for us.
Yeah, it really fits, right? It's this mela that keeps growing into a real mela. Do you want to talk a bit more about your take on this intersection between art and science? Because I get the feeling that it's pretty important for you. But in what way?
I happened to meet basically directors of both Maths Academy and Schloss Solitude. By meeting artists, I realized that they have different perspectives than what we have. And art and science is basically an attempt to explain the world around you.
Right.
So artists try to do that too in their own ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have an overlap because, artists use technologies or scientists use inspiration from art. And this angle is very interesting. And I thought that if we can work together with artists, maybe they can show different sides of our work, which then maybe is a different way of communicating with people about scientific work.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of lowering barriers a little bit.
For me, the idea is that if somebody is interested in wildlife, then they would naturally learn about the problems that wildlife faces, because this is where I come from, because I was interested in wildlife, and then I thought, where can I work, put my skills to best? And I was like, cool, I do computer vision, I'll do wildlife. Or at least that's my conclusion.
Right. And quickly before I pass the baton to Vivek, one of the main points of the podcast, or why the podcast was at all created as an idea, was that we wanted to get science a bit closer to people in a way that, like people can actually engage with the science. And I think art, in a way, is engaging or motivating people in different ways than science, but the end point doesn't necessarily deviate. But I think if you really want to know about the whole thing, you kind of would be interested anyway to engage from both aspects. And the more you put scientists and artists together, the more I think it makes people realize that actually this is possible and the different ways of engaging.
I mean, I see as not art and science are not very different from each other. I feel like science is one way of doing art in some sense. That's what artists are trying to do. They have very different media. Maybe they're sound artists, maybe they're filmmakers, but they have their own media and they're trying to tell a story that somehow touches you or reaches you in a certain way. As scientists, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell stories about the natural world. In science, of course, the one big difference is that it's evidence-based storytelling. We're really trying to learn something about the natural world.
Hemal, earlier you mentioned, this Indian mythology, right? As a way of explaining Leks to the local, right? Like this king organizing this event where, all of these suitors would come in and the princess would actually choose her suitable marriage partner. And I think one of the things that Vivek touched on then is, this whole idea about storytelling, that some stories, some mythologies endure for thousands of years. And I think it's all fantastical. And at some point, when you're a teenager, you're like, how did people actually believe this was real? Like that, the world was created out of what? And but people understand that it's a story, but it's a story that we tell ourselves and each other to kind of make sense of what goes on around us. And now, as you guys spend 3 years sitting in front of a lek and trying to figure out what's happening, you have your scientific way of telling a story. And I find that it's super cool that you also get different artists in to also sit in front of a lek and see what kind of story you can tell, right? And it doesn't have to be only grounded in science and only grounded in art, but these two kind of different ways of making sense of the world and the natural world, the environment around us can actually inspire each other as well.
No, for sure. I think what you just mentioned, I think Hemal just mentioned Simar, who was with us, the writer in the field. And what she's done is she's taken her experiences in the field with us, but then she's written a fictional story out of it, which gives a very satisfying ending and kind of it not just talks about our experiences there, it combines it with scientific theories and like hypotheses about leks and kind of links these different aspects of science, but with a fictional twist to it, which kind of resolves certain paradoxes.
Yeah, I guess so, because I feel like, okay, if I'm engaging in this project, I don't really know much about it, and if you guys were to ask me, come up with a set of hypotheses, I might be inclined in a certain way just because of one, my personal / scientific background and training. But then, the more different people and different interactions that I have, with you guys, with different artists, with other psychologists, with other biologists, and also just from the fact that you are in the field, this is really what you get. This is all the data that we're getting. Actually being open to different perspectives, I feel like it makes you more perceptive to the fact that nature doesn't really care about what you thought about it. Nature is this, and you better be ready, in terms of what it's trying to tell you about what it is.
Yeah. I mean, we have to be open to the fact that our preconceived hypotheses and notions, we might have to throw them out the window and kind of deal with what is happening there and kind of work with that. And
well, now that we have mentioned hypotheses, do you want to tell us about yours and whether or not they worked out?
There are lots of hypotheses within the lekking literature. So like the hotshot hypothesis is that there's one male who's sexy and this is the male that the females are interested in. And the other males kind of come and hang out in the neighborhood because potentially any female who doesn't mate with this male, there's others close by. There's a hotspot hypothesis, which talks about males aggregating because there's some resource not so far. So these are basically lots of females pass through here in their natural day because they probably want to go to a certain resource, and the males aggregate on way to this. So they will have many females passing by. There's hypothesis called female preference hypothesis, and this say that females just have a preference to mate with males who have aggregated or choose a male from an aggregation rather than solitary males. And then you also have kin selection hypothesis where, even if you don't mate by helping a related individual, in terms of your genes, you still pass on your genes to the next generation, because if I help my brother or sister find a mate, then we still share a certain proportion of our genetics. So that's basically kin selection. And so that hypothesis says that these aggregations of males are potentially related to each other. So there are several of these hypotheses. Some of them we can test with our data, some of them not. But the cool thing is, I think people have never had this type of spatiotemporal data, like movement of animals in such high detail. So we can actually look at the exact courtship behavior. We can quantify that. we can look at winner-loser effects, where if you tend to win one fight, then you're going to more likely win the next fight. Or if you lose a fight, you're more likely to lose the next fight.
I mean, it's really amazing to think about the fact that you guys now have like terabytes upon terabytes of like this really amazing data. But I can also imagine that it must be a bit difficult because now you have so many choices. You just listed off the top of your head, like, you know, like 10 hypotheses. I was keeping track, but you know, but it was a lot. But then how do you know where to start?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think, I mean, the nice thing is we are also a team of postdocs. I think Akanksha has different interests. I have different interests. Hemal has different interests. I mean, what we have is movement data. So you start looking at how the animals are moving, when they're moving fast, when they're moving slow, how they interact with each other. And to some degree, I think all these hypotheses that I listed out to you are hypotheses in the literature. But as we just discussed, I don't think I would want to go into the data assuming or looking for an outcome that matches any one of these hypotheses. So it's a little bit of it is that now I know all of these hypotheses exist in the literature, but I'm just going to go and dig into the data. Yeah. And when I start seeing patterns, what these hypotheses do is they help me make sense of the patterns that I see.
So basically let the data tell you.
Yeah.
Now, Hemal, you mentioned that you wanted to talk more about your relationship with the local people. So please.
I learned a lot in a sense that we interacted with, first of all, like local people in different ways. So local people, by that, what I mean is we had to interact with forest officials who give us permissions to work in the park, who will basically talk to us on a daily basis, and talking with local people, as I said, in terms of getting accommodation.
Yeah, catering, right, for a huge group.
But then during this process, we came through this interesting interaction with people in terms of learning their relationships with animals. For example, the forest officer at the Talchapar, Umesh Bagotia, he helped us a lot in organizing our work, but he was also very helpful in telling us about where we can see other wildlife and other animals, and tell us about what are their different types of behaviors as such. So it's something that we took from the place as well, which I think has evolved into this nice relationship. Like there are so many people from these villages where we worked in touch with us on WhatsApp. Sometimes they randomly send pictures or videos from the park. So we worked in, for example, Blackbuck National Park 2 years ago. And then for 2 years we didn't go there. We went to Rajasthan. But when we were in Blackbuck National Park, we had a guide with us every day, Zaid Bhai. Zaid is his name, Bhai. His job was basically to accompany us every day, because in that park, even as scientists, you could not go alone. And he was with us for entire 1.5 months, and we became really good friends. And he would randomly sometimes, after that, still do a video call with us to show some birds or something like that. And we are still in touch.
That is so nice.
And this person had so much knowledge about the wildlife there. Like he showed us so many birds, incredible birds in the region that we would have hard time in finding.
He would be like, "Oh, what birds do you want to see? Because we know what you can see." And you're like, "This one." Like, "All right, tomorrow."
Yeah, exactly.
And because that's the thing. Because sometimes I think a lot of people underappreciate the help that scientists get from the local people.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think in field biology or in science, we publish because at the end, for example, here also, we'll publish our science, which will be authored or co-authored by members of our community here. But there's a lot of knowledge there, or ideas there, which come from different sources.
Exactly, yeah.
And for us, for example, when we work in our areas, a lot of these little tidbits about knowledge or about behavior, because we are not there entire year. The Blackbucks are there entire year.
Exactly.
So when these, for example, forest guides who accompany us every day, they tell us something about that. Last year this happened, or this whole, for example, the Vivek, what he explained about switching of legs. Blackbucks are moving the leg. They told us about it. That, hey, which place you're going to record? And we said, what do you mean which place? There's only one place. And they said, no, there is another one. And so it's more about, understanding also the role that, and I think it's very poorly highlighted so far. Like I think in field projects, people who who watch animals, who officially or unofficially give you information. So because people often hire, trackers for throughout the year to find animals and log data. So this is what generally the role of local people ends up being. But I think there is a much more to it that we are exploring.
Yeah.
So this is also something that then we are trying to collectively put out through our art projects and stuff.
I think that needs to be highlighted a lot more. And of course, as scientists, when you publish a paper, you have the author list. But obviously, deep down inside, you know that you can't put every single person who's ever given you any relevant bit of information on there. I would actually like to also maybe draw the listeners' attention to the fact that you guys went there. I think that also might have even modified or changed the locals' relationship with the wildlife, right? Maybe to them, they've lived their entire life seeing blackbuck. Nothing special. And then there's this whole group of people who are like, we're going to come here, we're going to study, we're going to use all of these technology to get all of these data. This is of scientific interest and actually pretty important. And I think it's always a two-way street because sure, it's super important that, the local people, you form bonds with them, but they also form bonds with you. Because now next year, one of these guys are probably thinking, when are these guys, scientific guys, are going to come back? Maybe it's going to be another 2 months of fun, right?
No, it's already there. So, I mean, it's not only that, right? So in India, we have a lot of festivals every year. So there is a festival of Holi, for example, that happens bang in between our field season. And it's basically a festival where people come out on the streets and put colors on each other and, I don't know, water and dance and have a good time. And we've been celebrating from this year, we missed the festival because of the dates were sort of misaligned. But last 2 years, we've been basically going out in the village and having a day off and having festivities because immediately you become, in a way, part of the community. Usually these places are smaller and there are interesting tidbits to what you said. It's like, because, for example, for many of them, it's this curiosity that these people generally look very well off and they're from the city and scientists, educated.
Right.
But then the very basic question, because this is where you have to understand rural areas, is that why is this guy getting so much money to look at deers? So in the village, like when we get our tea in the morning, everyone's coming there, right? So when we are having tea, we have vegetable seller coming there, or there is a guy with electrical shop, or somebody who is like doing ironing of clothes. We are all there. And then we are discussing this. And of course, like, so sometimes, like Jahid Bhai asked me once about like my daily life, because for him, it was so foreign to comprehend that, somebody is collecting videos here and then he's going to go to Germany and look at those videos and do something. And it's really very well paid.
I mean, the closest they can think of is photographers, people who do wildlife photography for fun. It's like, okay, this can be your hobby, but surely this is not a job.
So it helps us learn also a lot about the situation. So, for example, this year we met a very nice school teacher who explained us that, look, we need to build scientific temper in the village. And he explained us that there was no subject of science taught in the village until last 3 years ago. Because, at rural areas, school availability, and this then plays into, dynamics of developing countries and so on, what kind of facilities. So they have arts facility available. So they were basically teaching arts. If you want to study science, you have to go a bit further. That's why it becomes very interesting aspect that even I, as who can talk a lot with the people there, is slowly understanding the complexities of how the interactions are.
So before you leave, I always try to ask my interviewees, my guests, if they have a pep talk for academics. Whether that be someone who might be struggling about staying in academia, or someone who's thinking about entering academia but not sure if it's really for them. Like, is there a way or like a sort of motto that you keep in your head? Like, because this is still important to me, this is going right for me. If this thing kind of works, this is it for me. Like, academia is for me and I can make it however I want. Do you want to start first, Vivek?
One thing maybe motivational is to, at least speaking about doing animal behavior, you don't have to have an undergraduate in behavior, ecology, evolution, master, PhD, and take that route. All three of us, Akanksha, Hemal, and I, are engineers. You can take very, very different routes. I think for me, what is most important, or like, it's like, are you curious? and excited about this. And I feel like if you are, not to say that everything will be breezy, it's always going to be difficult and it's going to be ups and downs, but it's going to be fine. You will kind of get past those.
For me, I think, a lot of people can have mental health issues because of stress and other things. Usually what has helped me is, I think, why I started doing it. I think many times it happens that you start really, like, you make a very big decision. You move to another country to do something. You're motivated to study this animal, so you moved your life to another city, you did all of that. And that's a huge step, that's a huge step. And maybe sometimes just going back a little bit in terms of, that, oh, wait, but why I started doing this? And I think that helped many times in reshaping things as well. That, okay, well, maybe this path is not for me, or this path is for me because this is why I started it, or not.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, guys. I am so pleased that we got this opportunity to do the podcast together.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Such a huge pleasure from our side as well. And stay tuned for next time. Bye.